All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Greetings all. It is another great show with many great people passing through, and you will not be disappointed. That's what I have to tell you. Kim is here, riding the herd over all things news. Albert is here.
Albert,
he is running this entire show. We have some clips of the former president's conversation at that Black Broadcasters Convention. I mean, I don't know what you can do. I will have some remarks just in general on Trump and the state of things, but he certainly didn't distinguish himself well. I mean, you may actually look at it and go, well, you know, she came at him pretty hard. What could he have said? I'll tell you what I think he could have said that I think would have diffused the situation. I got maybe the best email I've received in a while, you know, and I'll share that with you from somebody who is a fan of the show.
There's never been anything like this.
Wherever you are, smash the like button for us.
Smash it with your iron rod.
If you're on YouTube, if you're listening along the many audio platforms where the show shows up as a podcast, then you don't need to smash anything. All the smashing has been done for you. So there's that. I will tell you, I have COVID.
Oh,
it's
man.
hit our house.
What? You too.
Yeah. Courtney and myself both have COVID, and it sucks, and I don't feel great, and I have a feeling I'm going to start feeling even worse. So if things really get bad, I'll just turn it over to Kim. But I always feel if you don't sound under the weather and you can, function, you should try to get the show on, But today, one of the people I really wanted to talk to, so I really don't want to miss the show, is the Roastmaster General out of Coachella Valley Coffee. Cliff is coming through. So I'm hoping that we can get him squared away, Albert, and that that he'll connect without any problem. He's been on the show once before, but they have a new blend, which is really kind of wild, and I'm excited to share that with you. And just in general, I think, look, there's a lot going on. I want to do the show whenever I can, and I also want to share with you some thoughts on, the state of the race, that sort of thing. So we'll get that all done. But the one thing I would mention about COVID is that the doc said, get on that Paxlovid, or Paxlovid. I don't know. I've heard it both ways. I said, okay, great. So he said, I've called some into your pharmacy. So I call the pharmacy, and they say, well, we won't be able to get it until 4:30 or 5 today. We don't have any here. And just so you know, your copay is $500.
Yikes.
Yeah.
I had to pay $400 for my Paxlovid.
It is, Now, Kim told me that
that's real.
Kim told me that the Paxlovid is almost as bad as COVID.
Well, for me it was. I guess it affects everyone differently, but it put this taste in my mouth, like a rancid grapefruit, metallic, weird taste that doesn't go away. And
rancid
gastrointestinal stuff.
Yeah.
It makes your guts feel gross. So, I mean, at least for me. And so by the end of it, I'm looking at this pack full of 3. You have to take 3 pills at a time. And I'm looking at the pack thinking, God, I got to take it again? It's killing me. But the risk of long COVID is worth the 5 days of grossness, so I went for it.
Okay. Phineas says, Mark, blame Trump and the GOP for the high Paxlovid prices.
Yep.
Maybe. Anyway, that's the hard candies from Sandy. She says, help with the metallic taste from Paxlovid. I like cinnamon hard candies. Interesting. Anyway. Let me get to a couple of, hang on, I have to.
Are you okay?
Sneeze, I think.
COVID. Yeah. Here comes COVID, like a
nasty
dish on wheels, like hell on wheels.
It is nasty, everybody. Nasty, nasty, man.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Before we get into the heavy stuff, and there is some good heavy stuff to get into, in addition to the Donald Trump, I don't know what you'd call that. I'd call it a meltdown on stage. I mean, You know, when you start turning on the people who, you know, you got to know your room, as they say, and that is not the room to turn on Kamala Harris with some stuff about how, well, she identified as Indian and she identified as black. What is she, Indian, black? I mean, dude, that may work at your rallies with white supremacists, but it doesn't work in that room, okay? So you just got to know that. But more on that in a second. This from the mailbag.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Well, it's not really a bag, as you know. It's an email, and the email is themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. Tim writes, what?
Oh, go ahead. Carry on.
Tim writes, hi, Mark. I have to admit, I get a little jealous when you mentioned to people that listen to your show that it came from KGO, because I'm one of them. Actually, I truly believe I might be one of your biggest fans because I have never missed a show on KGO, and I've never missed a show on your new YouTube channel.
Wow, that's dedication.
That is pretty damn impressive.
That's dedication. Love it.
So, again, if you're just joining us, we came from a radio station that doesn't exist anymore. The radio station was called KGO, so that's what that KGO reference is about. I'm not kidding either, he said. We just don't go on any vacations, and I'm self-employed, so that gives me a lot of freedom. And, of course, with COVID, there was a good 2 years that helped. And to think I had no idea who you were when Ron Owens introduced you for the first time. Anyway, although I do feel I am your biggest fan, you'll never catch me wearing Mark Thompson T-shirts or flying Mark Thompson flags behind my big, huge truck. I don't know what that's about. Why not? Maybe on, Labor Day or something. You can maybe pick up a throw pillow for your place, Tim. Anyway, he says, one of your biggest fans, and he signs it, Tim. And that really is quite
There wasn't
lovely.
even a but? There was not even a but?
There's not a but. Usually, I'm your biggest fan. I've never missed a show, but I don't like it when you know. Somebody else asking about Patreon, because we are on Patreon, and that really is the mother's milk of this show, Patreon and PayPal. That's how we stay on the air. We have a sort of a PBS NPR model, so you have to go to those places to be part of that community. You can contribute, and then you can make a monthly contribution. So quite beautifully, Vilma said, I had to change my card, and I keep getting an email from Patreon that the card that they're using is not working. You may just be better off canceling and starting again, Vilma, and anybody else. I've gotten this from several people. Yeah. It's not just her. That's why I mention it. Shout out to Spencer Christian also, who just edited membership from $30 a month to $40 a month. How about that? Spencer Christian. Him. He is a national treasure.
Yeah.
And he
just feels bad. He feels like he owes you probably in some capacity.
Why is that?
I mean, he did take that big fancy job from you.
Oh, that's
true. Now it feels like he's got to kick some down toward you,
Well, he doesn't owe me anything. Yeah, Franco says, hey, Mark, I noticed you were not wearing your blue sport coat today. I guess this might read blue, but it's actually like a faded black. Yeah. Do you want to auction it off for the show? What size is it? I remember that you said it was a one-off, so I can't buy one off the rack. Franco, I can never part with this jacket. I've loved this jacket ever since I've gotten it. I tried to get another jacket made just like it. I took it to a custom clothier, and he came nowhere near this jacket. It's because of the distressed nature of the fabric. Mm-hmm. But I like how you're thinking. Make an offer on something else. Everything else is for sale here. But the jacket
beloved
has to
jacket.
stay. Mm-mm. Yeah, we're on the jacket. All right, so that's the latest from the email. How did both you and Kim get COVID? Maybe it goes through the wires. I still haven't had COVID. Gail Guthrie, HOF, big shout out to Gail. And I might say...
Big shout out.
Yeah, Courtney and I were in Las Vegas this past weekend. I think that's where we got it. I mean, I looked at that whole weekend. I thought, oh, my God, this is like congregate setting after congregate setting. And then you get on the airport tram, and then you get to the airport gate, and then you get on the plane. It's all just awful. I mean, if there's a contagion around, you're going to be exposed to it. So
it is weird, though, that you and Nikki and I all have it at the same time.
Although, honestly, it's spiking, so everybody's getting it right now. I mean, at KFI Radio, where I do a lot of work, everybody's got it there.
Yep.
Pamela Kirby.
Big shout out.
Yay. Can't wait to hear from Cliff. Sorry to hear you have COVID. Yeah, Cliff, the Roast Master General, bottom of the hour. And Spencer, always welcome. Spencer Jaffe with a $5 super sticker. Thank you. We're crowdfunded, as I just mentioned, so any super stickers and super chats are very much appreciated. All right. Thank you, everybody. That's a few of the loose ends we wanted to get to. And
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'll get to the Trump stuff, and of course, there's a lot of the legal stuff with David Katz, the former federal prosecutor who leads off the second hour. I wanted to mention, though, it's pretty big news, a massive prisoner swap with Russia. The Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan, who was always accused of being a spy for the U.S., they will be coming home. Albert, you have a little something on it?
We are picking back up now with continuing coverage of this moment in American history, the release of 3 American citizens, 1 legal permanent resident from Russia in a multinational prisoner swap. Keir Simmons, let me go back to you, our chief international correspondent here. And Keir, to say there are a lot of moving pieces in this swap is an understatement. We're talking about more than 20 individuals. We're talking about a half dozen nations having to choreograph this to the minute.
That's right. And a statement from the Turkish government there in Ankara suggesting that there are 26. Now, we don't know the details, so we have to be cautious here. But up until now, Russia has insisted on 1 for 1, if you like. So 1 prisoner, 1 Russian prisoner for somebody being held inside of Russia. And I think it's unlikely that they will have wavered from that. And that is one of the reasons why you're seeing this highly complex dance, if you like, with multiple planes arriving. I'm just looking down now to read what the Turkish government has said, a total of 7 aircraft, including 2 from the United States and 1 each from Germany, Poland, Slovenia, Norway, and Russia as part of the prisoner exchange operation. According to Turkey, they say 10 prisoners, including 2 minors, were relocated to Russia, 13 prisoners to Germany, and 3 prisoners to the United States. And again, we know now, and you can see that headline from the Wall Street Journal, that Evan Gershkovich is one of those, Paul Whelan. There's also Alsu Kamesheva and Vladimir Karamusa. Both of them, we think now, are free. We should just pause for a moment, though, Hallie, to say, and when you were mentioning it earlier before that special report, Mark Fogel and Kesnia Karolina, she's the ballet dancer, dual Russian-American citizen who was arrested recently in Russia. They do not appear to be included in this. And so inevitably there will be, and rightly, there will be questions about how come they aren't there when so many are there. And in fact, in the case of Paul Whelan, when Brittany Griner was released, he was not released, and that upset his family very much. These are such difficult moments for so many people, for the families who are learning that their loved ones are free, and also for the families who are finding out that their loved ones are not free. And then there is also, there's going to be a political question. I mean, you were talking earlier about Vadim Krasikov. This is a Russian security intelligence officer who is in jail, or was in jail in Germany for murder, for the assassination of someone in a park. And many in the US government will be concerned by the idea of exchanging American prisoners, who the American government is clear were wrongfully detained, with somebody who was...
I think we get it, Albert. It's very, very complex. And that's the foreign correspondent for NBC, Keir Simmons, with the jagged jaw. Does that guy look like a foreign correspondent or what? He's
pretty much a babe. He's a babe.
Yeah, he is. Put him back up there again, Albert, can you? Still of that guy? He's got the rugged jaw, and then he's got the great hair, and he's got when he opens his mouth, he's speaking with an accent. I mean, it's a triple threat.
Yeah, he is.
So anyway, so he reported that. Meantime, the sad news here in California is the fire. I mean, it's just the most severe wildfire season in 16 years, after 2 years that weren't that bad. And I just want to check off on it, as I do every day, because I just, first, not that the firefighters are watching, but I'm so grateful for all the firefighters who sacrifice so much, and the conditions are just brutal. 629,000 acres, nearly 1,000 square miles burned statewide, and that is just the most by this date on the calendar since 2008. 2 wet winters in a row, they say, led to explosive growth of grass, brush, and other vegetation, so you have a lot of fuel. And normally, wet winters tend to reduce the risk of wildfires, but mountain areas are, for whatever reason, they're being consumed. I think a lot of this is sort of mountainous terrain, isn't it, Kim? This is the forestry that's being consumed. These are hillsides, steep hillsides you can't get into. But usually what happens is there's a lot of snow in the mountain areas, and it stays, and that helps retard the beginning of the season because you just have that snow on the ground. But a record heat wave in June, that's what caused all that snow to evaporate, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in. So,
and something else really scary is that today and tomorrow in the Sierra and in parts of Southern California, we have the risk of thunderstorms.
Right.
Which,
right.
You have thunderstorms, you have dry conditions, and, here we come with more fires sparked around the state.
Well, what you're talking about is dry lightning, which is a real problem, and it does start a lot of fires. You have all the elements of a thunderstorm, including lightning, except you don't have the rain. That can oftentimes be the case. Meantime,
The Mark Thompson Show.
High above the earth, nearly 2 months after it was launched, and almost 50 days after the 2 astronauts were initially supposed to return to Earth, there are these 2 astronauts stuck at the International Space Station, and I just wanted to check off on them. They were trapped by troubles with the Boeing Starliner spacecraft, and the 2 astronauts who made the journey on the Starliner, Barry Butch Wilmore and Sunita Suni Williams, have been at the ISS longer than initially intended. NASA and Boeing both say the astronauts are not stranded. Some headlines have used the word stranded, and Boeing doesn't like that. The trip was always intended as a test voyage for the spacecraft, and Boeing and NASA have said that the time spent understanding and fixing the spacecraft's issues, multiple helium leaks, thrusters that shut off unexpectedly, good times. They say it's valuable. On Saturday of last week, NASA and Boeing engineers performed tests on 27 of the spacecraft's 28 thrusters. So the system that propels the Starliner into space appears to be working, and the thrusters appear to be performing well enough to bring the spacecraft back to Earth. So that's the good news on
The Mark Thompson Show.
that. And now I would like to turn our attention to the former president, who was out on the campaign trail. And as you know, he made a big appearance yesterday. And let's do a little chunk of Trump.
Open wide.
Ready?
Here comes your chunk of Trump.
It's my favorite food.
With your first bite, here's Mark Thompson.
I have a feeling it's going to be beautiful.
As Politico said, Trump and his allies had a plan for how to hit Harris. Then Trump opened his mouth, scrambling to put an end to Kamala Harris's ascent. Donald Trump's campaign and outside allies came up with a plan to hit hard on immigration. Call her a liberal prosecutor. Call her a radical. It didn't last long. You know, he was only on stage for 34 minutes before the National Association of Black Journalists, but that was enough for him to do some damage. Here it is from the very beginning. You can watch a little bit of it.
Rachel Scott, ABC. Thank you. How are you? How are you?
That music, I think, is in the hall.
Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe Black district attorneys. You've attacked Black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking Black supporters to vote for you, why should Black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the Black population of this country. I've done so much for the Black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for Black workers and Black entrepreneurs. I've done so much, and and I say this, historically Black colleges and universities were out of money. They were stone cold broke, and I saved them, and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense. And then you said, you can't do it with Zoom. Well, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom, and she's not coming. And then you were half an hour late. Just so we understand, I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working or something was wrong.
Mr. President, I would love if you can answer the question on your rhetoric and why you believe that Black voters should trust you with another 4
I have
years.
been the best president for the Black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act?
And for you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work, in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace.
Let me just ask a follow-up, sir, and then we'll move on to other questions here. Some of your own supporters, including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first Black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
Give me
a definition then. Would you give me a definition
DEI.
of that? Give me a definition.
Sir, I'm asking you a question, a very direct question.
Define it for me, if you would.
I just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a Black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was Black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn Black, and now she wants to be known as Black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she Black?
She has always identified as a Black woman. She went to a historically Black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn, and she became a Black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do you believe that
I think somebody should look into that too when you continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
It's a direct question, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, as some Republicans have said?
I mean, I really don't know. Could be. There are some, and there are plenty. I know this lady right over there, Harris, is a fantastic person who just interviewed me at length. And we had a great interview, I think, and I heard you got very good ratings on that.
Well, you told me it was the longest one of your life, so we had a good discussion.
Okay, Albert,
Look,
thank you.
I want to talk about...
That's Rachel Scott. Is that who that is?
That's Rachel Scott with ABC, and she kicked ass.
Let me tell you something first about Rachel Scott. That's the kind of conversation you should have with Donald Trump. Yeah. That's the kind of conversation the media doesn't have with Donald Trump. Mad respect to Rachel Scott for showing the rest of the media the way it's done. You may even remember the debate that cost Joe Biden the candidacy for re-election. That's the way you ask a debate question. You ask it pointedly, you stack those things up, and you launch. And that's exactly the way debates in the past have worked. Now, you may say, really, Mark? I mean, it is kind of rude. You put the guy on the... No. It's easy to handle a question like that. Here's how you handle it. You say, you know, I've said a lot of things. It's true. And I say some things out of passion. I say some things out of emotion. And sometimes I regret some of the things I've said. And so when you stack them all up like that, I hear things in there and I think I was having a bad day, whatever you want to say.
Right.
But you say it was a bad moment. Sometimes I say things in response to a situation. You smooth it over. And then you say, but he can't do that. What I just described, he can't do. He doesn't
ever admit wrongdoing or, you know, mistakes. No, that's not him.
Cindy says, Mark, that's boring. Trump isn't boring. Well, Trump doesn't apologize, and he doubles down. And the other thing I would just mention is one word which he doesn't have, and you need it to do the kind of thing that I just described in response to a question like that. You need humility. Yes. Even if you're faking the humility, Mr. Trump, which you would be, I encourage you, sir, to find it, because that is the way to handle a situation like that. Instead, he's combative, he attacks the mics. You know, it was crazy. It was really also crazy how he lost track of the room. I mean, you're playing in a room that isn't receptive to this kind of a hate toward people of color, to your general ranting about starting late. By the way, they didn't start late because of the mics. That is not true. He just made that up. But there are ways to handle these things. Now, let me speak to the damage done, because I'm hearing a lot of that does it. He's done. Oh, my God. Guys, please. He talked about grabbing a woman by her private parts, and he not only survived that, he went on to win the presidency. There is a big chunk of America, because of the intensely partisan nature of our politics, that is okay with this. That's why it comes down to a sliver of people in swing states to decide this. The Electoral College map is generally GOP leaning, as you know. The Dems will have to win probably 4% more to be able to carry the Electoral College map. Now, it can be done. The last guy did it. But I'm just saying, this isn't the end. No.
There was a beautiful moment in that interview. The question came from a different reporter on stage. And Trump was asked about immigration, and he turned to his immigrants are taking away, quote, black jobs. And so then the reporter said, well, what are black jobs? And he kind of went, well, I guess they're the same as everybody's jobs.
He says any job is a black job.
The whole audience started cracking up, like, see what we mean? Like, you're ridiculous. And then he said, he said, well, I guess there's mostly black people here. It's all black people. It's the NABJ. There are no white people there. I've often been sad that I couldn't attend because it's such a fun event. But yeah, it's all black people. It's like he didn't even realize where he was. I'll give him props for showing up, though, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about Donald Trump is that he feels he can handle any situation. And that's a great gift to have that kind of confidence. Mm-hmm. But it also can get you into trouble because you end up in a place where you can't pull off the same stuff you pull off in a rally, in one of your rally rooms or one of your huge outdoor rallies. They're ready to play your game and hear your hits. I mean, he plays the hits. He's been playing the same hits since 2016. But I'd suggest that he needs to change his strategy a bit. Flo says, good morning, Mark. Good morning, Kim. And a big shout out to Flo because this is a super chat.
Big shout out.
Very sorry you both and Courtney came down with the blasted COVID. The former POTUS at the NABJ was abysmal and worse. No shame. SNL will have a field day with this. Dems should too. Yeah. It's in the news cycle. You know, I talk about the news cycle a lot because I think that media messaging is really what it's all about. They establish essentially what's important. I'll remind you when Hillary Clinton was in the news cycle toward the last 10 days of the election with Jim Comey firing up the email thing. All the media could talk about was the emails, right? And that kept the email question front and center. And similarly, every news cycle is dominated by a story or a constellation of stories. You guys were late. A dig at colored people time, says No Contender. Yeah, I mean, that was the other thing. I mean, there was a quality of, this whole scene is ghetto. I don't understand how you guys can do this. I mean, there was really a sense on the part of Trump as he was riffing about the room that was associated with kind of just lifting his leg on it, But that is his style. So that's the latest. And Kamala Harris, to her credit, do we have anything more on it, Albert, before I move on? Isn't there a second piece of... I think the second piece was the immigrants coming here to take the black jobs. Isn't that's the same thing?
Yeah, let me just give me a couple
I don't know if that... But Kim already kind of noted that.
Sorry.
No,
I
that's
stole
okay.
your thunder.
No, it's not a problem.
So we reported this yesterday on the show as it was happening, that he had accused Vice President Kamala Harris of turning black, right? It was so ridiculous, outrageous even. And you know what? Half the country won't see it that way.
Right. That's exactly, I have a black job. I'll be voting for sure, says Audrey. Luis, with a $5 super
Big
chat,
shout out.
Says, where were the white cult members that usually travel with Trump? He blames Albert. Yeah, Albert.
Albert, thank you.
I actually think that Trump can get into that call and response thing on the road, and he doesn't realize even that not every room is the same. And he just didn't remember that this is a different room. You can't pull that trash on this group. You have to downshift for this. What do you have, Albert? Anything?
You wanted to choose for vice president.
Yeah.
And you said normally it really wouldn't matter what they would bring.
This is about
You
J.D.
choose somebody
Vance,
that you think has a future, that sort of thing. But you said these words 3.5 hours before an attempted assassination on your life. You told me that bad things happen, Harris, and that's why this decision is important this time. Bad things happen. You said it twice. When you look at J.D. Vance, is he ready on day one?
Does he what?
Ready on day one, if he has to be.
I've always had great respect for him, and for the other candidates too. But I will say this, and I think this is well documented. Historically, the vice president, in terms of the election, does not have any impact. I mean, virtually no impact. You have 2 or 3 days where there's a lot of commotion as to who, like you're having it on the Democrat side, who it's going to be. And then that dies down, and it's all about the presidential pick. Virtually never has it mattered. Maybe Lyndon Johnson mattered for different reasons of what we're talking about, not for vote reasons, but for political reasons, other political reasons. But historically, the choice of a vice president makes no difference. You're voting for the president, and you can have a vice president who's outstanding in every way, and I think JD is. I think that all of them would have been, but you're not voting that way. You're voting for the president. You're voting for me. If you like me, I'm going to win. If you don't like me, I'm not going to win.
Yeah. So there is the non-endorsement of J.D. Vance. He never said, of course he's ready on day one. Why do you think I would have chosen him? He said a lot of stuff, but essentially he said, you're voting for me. Don't forget you're voting for me. I mean, that's not nothing in the sense that it reminds you he has his own doubts about J.D. Vance.
What a vote of confidence in your running mate.
J.D. Vance is getting into the news cycle in all the bad ways, and Trump is well aware of that. That is your chunk of Trump.
That's it for this edition.
Well, I really enjoyed it.
But make sure to join us again next time
I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening.
for another chunk of Trump.
By the way, everybody knows that Kamala Harris's father is from Jamaica and her late mother from India, and there has never been any question about that. She hasn't shifted in identities along the way. That's a completely concocted, made-up thing. So there's been a lot of criticism on both sides.
She went to a historically black college university.
Yeah, Howard University. Yeah, in Washington.
Like, there's never been any issue with her denying her blackness.
Sure.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, she was a member of a historically black sorority. I mean, it's, again, as Kim correctly says, there's never been any question about that.
I have a lot of friends of mixed race, And they'll tell me this, that it doesn't matter what they consider themselves, because the minute people see them, they're considered black. That's the way the world works. It doesn't matter what other nationalities are thrown into the mix. The minute people see them, they say, "Oh, that's a black woman," and anything else doesn't matter. So to have that even questioned is offensive.
The best thing Uncle Scrooge says, the best thing, and can I just get a big shout out to Uncle Scrooge?
Big shout out.
Super sticker. Uncle Scrooge says, the best thing to expose Trump is just to let him talk. He looks crazy and feeble. His supporters don't think anything is wrong with the way he speaks. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. He really does. He's his own worst enemy. But that said, again, the intensely partisan nature of the electorate leaves him with a lot of ways to still walk into the White House as president this next time. So I would not get too cocky about it. That's all I would say. Kim, I really want to talk to the Roastmaster General. Is he here?
He is
Albert?
here. Yeah.
He's here. We could do
Kim's news toward the top of the hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to give a quick shout out via a sweeper, little brief sweeper, and then we'll get to the Roastmaster General on this show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on, everybody.
Hey, Mark. It's George Santos here.
Okay, George. Remember when George Santos was all the thing? Gosh, it seems like years ago now. Well, you've heard me rave about the coffee, and you should know that I used to drink this coffee regularly before they came on to the show as sponsors. And since they've come on to the show as sponsors, I've checked out the variety of coffees, the variety of beans, the teas, everything on their website at Coachella Valley Coffee. And we have a discount code for our listeners and viewers. It's Mark T. Use it at checkout, and you'll get 10% off anything on the site. But what I've been really promising you for weeks is a conversation with the Roastmaster General at Coachella Valley Coffee. How about it for Cliff, everybody?
Well. Good morning, sir. How are you? Let me give you a shout out because, I get hit up for a lot of radio stations throughout this valley wanting me to advertise there. And I partnered with you because you're a coffee guy. You understand what we do. I don't need to just run a commercial somewhere. I loved Mark Thompson because he's a coffee freak.
It is true that I love coffee. I don't know if it's a good thing, but whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it's a thing, and I have it. And I love the tasting notes that are on the website. So when you're knocking around the website and you're considering different beans and different purchases or trying various things, there are tasting notes. You try to tell the customer, hey, this is a darker roast, this is a lighter roast, this has hints of chocolate, this has hints of cinnamon, and that's a really a great thing, and I find it a useful resource on the site.
Yeah, and those aren't set in stone because, we all have different palates. It's just a suggestion. Hey, you might pick up some baker's chocolate, just some notes of that. You might feel the smoothness of the caramel in there, or you might taste a stone fruit, a plum in there. But it's not going to taste like a plum, but your palate's going to recognize some of those flavors. So we enjoy these.
I wonder if you can just remind everybody, we only have a minute or two with Cliff, but I wanted to remind everybody, one of the things that I like beyond the coffee and beyond, by the way, we'll get to it in a second, there's a new blend that is just really quite special. I called it the other day on the air, I said, it's like a gateway coffee. Like if you're not a coffee person, try this and this will get you hooked on coffee. We'll get to that in a second.
Absolutely.
I wonder if you can speak to the ethic, because you guys are really concerned with starting businesses and supporting businesses largely run by women across the world. And I wonder if you can speak to that.
And, I'm 30 years into this roasting coffee business. And as I travel to different countries, I always try to take care of families. Then I realized decades ago that if you want to take care of a family, you get the female the money because she'll always take care of the kids first. So that's always been our goal, is to when I started this company in 2019, we really partnered with the women coffee farmers that I already knew, and we found some new ones. So every coffee I have now is from a female-owned farm, because we want to make sure those families are taken care of. And we've also, throughout the years, do other things, and we support local schools down there. We would buy kids' uniforms. This is why we're in business, is to help others. And this is an easy way for somebody to help a family down in Nicaragua. You know, last year we got a 10-year contract with our local airport. Any coffee at the Palm Springs Airport, at the Coachella Valley Coffee Shop, any of the other restaurants, that all comes from us. And I went to the mayor, and, you know, tears running down my eye because I'm a baby. And I said, this doesn't change my life. I drive my 16-year-old car. I said, but what it does is I get to call my farmer in Nicaragua and El Salvador, and I get to triple my order. So this little act in Palm Springs changed lives in other countries.
That's just so special, and it's a window on the ripple effect of what you're talking about. Somebody's asking in the chat about the cold brew. I was raving about the cold brew. Here it is. Audrey says, the cold brew someone mentioned yesterday. They sell everything to make it, and it was liked. I can't remember who asked or who answered, sorry. But the cold brew is not just coffee that's cold. There's something about that cold brew. It's got like a bunch of tasting notes in it that really make it special.
Yeah, the cold brew is prepared a little bit different. You steep it for 18 to 20 hours in cold water. Just set it on your kitchen counter and then put it in the fridge. It'll last 5 days. But being steeped like that, less acidic, more caffeine if you want the caffeine, because it's soaking more caffeine out of the bean. But it's a beautiful coffee. We are so excited about that. When I first created this recipe 2 years ago, I sent it to all my craft beer friends out here in the desert. And the emails I got from the wineries, the winemakers, I can't say the words they use, but they were excited about it. That's what I wanted. I wanted a cold brew with some body. We're so excited about it. It's
now tell me about this new blend.
I have two. This past weekend, I had a contest with Sim, who's back behind me shooting some pictures. We wanted to create a Café de Olla blend, which is coffee, cinnamon, and piancillo, a dark brown sugar, cane sugar from Mexico. And I thought, I'm going to win. Look, I've been in this business 30 years, and he's been with me for 8 months, but he also grew up in Mexico. He created his recipe. I created mine, and we did a blind taste testing. He blew me away. So it's our newest coffee, a Café de Olla. It's ground. It's got the sugar in it and the cinnamon. And as you brew it, it's a gateway. And then we did one new thing. We did it as a cold brew. Lord, it's great. Then we created one more coffee just for you. We now have our half calf. It's on the website because some of us have to slow down our caffeine consumption.
I have to slow it. The doctor actually said that I may be drinking too much, so I have to.
Doctor said that too, and I switched doctors. Thank you. Thank you. So you're all week.
Albert, jump on the website, show everybody what it looks like. And again, the Coachella Valley Coffee Roastmaster General Cliff taking time out of what is a pretty demanding schedule to spend a minute or two with us. You can see all of the different coffees, where they come from, where they're sourced, the richness, the darkness, the robust nature of some of them, and then the lighter nature of others. It's really it's terrific. And then the tea. The chai tea Courtney loves. She likes the loose leaf teas, and knock around and save yourself some money using our discount code MARKT at checkout. But there you see it: ginger mint, vanilla tea. There's the bag tea, the loose leaf, as I mentioned, mint with date crystals, mango tea, turmeric, chai tea, hibiscus, flowers tea. I mean, look at the English breakfast, sencha. Look at all of this. I mean, it's really impressive.
And all of those teas we bring in bulk, and then we hand blend them as well. I just like things that taste good. And let me one up everything now. For all of your viewers, listeners, if they order in August, we're going to send them a sample at that Café de Olla. Because yes, that's my gateway.
That's terrific. So order in August, use the discount code MARKT, and you'll get a sample of the Gateway coffee. Which is so special, and it's got that cinnamon finish. It almost feels like a dessert coffee. It's
great after dinner coffee. And from the bottom of our heart, I have to tell you, we appreciate your viewers and listeners for their support. I'm looking through our orders that came in today. I think we have 8 with the MARKT discount. And they're so kind. They call me. We got a call from a lady yesterday. I think it was Stephanie, that she ordered the cold brew. And she just wanted to tell me how great the decaf cold brew was. And for people to take time and to call us, or they'll call if they don't know how to do the order, we have time for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a relationship that you have with your customer that really is special, and I don't mention it enough probably, but it's really cool that you take time as well to chat with them. But I'll just reiterate it. August is your month. Anything you order, use the discount code MarkT, and you'll get sent to you a sample of what's it called again? It's the
Cafe de Olla. Here
Cafe
it is.
de Olla.
Look at that beautiful bag.
Yeah, it's so nice.
Or as Mark Thompson says, the Gateway Coffee.
It's the Gateway Coffee, everybody. You know it. Hey,
And
Cliff,
you.
be well. I know it's hot as Hades down there in the desert, but stay cool, and congratulations on all the success. Did you have something, Kim?
I just wanted to thank him for the really good tea. I'm addicted.
She likes that vanilla tea.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Love it.
Thank you.
right,
We appreciate you.
Love your stuff. Thanks, pal. All right.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
It's Cliff, the Roast Master General. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
We get into the law coming up. David Katz, the former federal prosecutor, will get. I don't know if you saw that Rudy Giuliani is in the news legally. Yeah, there's a big break in the Rudy Giuliani maneuvering with his bankruptcies. I will share that with you when David Katz jumps on board. I wanted to touch on the Olympics. Now, I have to make it clear, I don't want any spoilers, okay? So give me a spoiler alert before you give me anything. What I'd like is some offbeat Olympics news. I mean, we've already talked about a lot of controversies that have emerged in this Olympic Games, and this may be no different.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Famed boxing promoter Eddie Hearn talking about the Olympic controversy over the alleged biological men competing in women's boxing.
What?
Yeah. Eddie Hearn talking about two female boxers who failed to meet the gender eligibility criteria competing against women at these Olympic Games. The boxers in question from Algeria and Taiwan were disqualified. You were telling me about another match, though, right, Kim?
So I don't know if this is a spoiler alert or not, but just in case, I'll throw it out there. There was an Italian boxer. Her name is Angela Carini. She got into the ring with this Algerian trans woman. And she said this is not done to make a political statement or anything else. But within the first 46 seconds of their match, the Algerian boxer threw a punch and landed on her nose. And she said she had never been hit that hard in her life. And she knew right then that for her safety, she had to get out of the ring. So the match lasts 46 seconds. Angela Carini from Italy is in tears as she leaves the ring. And this is a video this 46-second long video being posted all over social media as some type of anti-trans, athlete type of thing. But Carini said it had nothing to do with that, whether she was trans or not. She said, I just knew that I had to get out of the ring because it wasn't safe for me. So
yeah, I mean, this is insanity, the way some of these trans athletes are just so powerful. They have the musculature of men, and then you could let them get in there as boxers. It's really hard for me to watch women boxing anyway. I don't know why. Maybe that's not cool or, but I have problems with that. Lola Anderson, this might be a little bit of a spoiler. She gets gold for her dad. She's a Great Britain rower, a rower from from Britain. But here's what's interesting about this. Her father kept her childhood diary entry about her dream of winning the Olympics and gave it to her 2 months before he died of cancer.
Oh, man.
And now she wins gold. So that is a pretty special story.
What a story, yeah.
Yeah. Meantime, track and field controversy erupts. An LSU athlete fuming. They said that the track and field will be the biggest event this time at the Paris Olympics. The Stade de France, shaped like an amphitheater, heightens the anticipation, Kim. They never mentioned, though, that the unfortunate withdrawals could overshadow these same Olympics. Jamaican field athlete Nayoka Clunas had to hit the exit gate even before hitting the flight bound for the Paris Olympics. Remember, she needed qualifications. The authorities didn't add her name to a list. If you're familiar with it, it's really kind of sad. And Yolanda Legarambe also had the same problem. Now this list of people who didn't make it because it would seem that the administrative aspects of adding them as track and field athletes didn't get done. Nigerian sprinter Favor Ophil. The sprinter penned a detailed Instagram post protesting against her country's sporting officials. She also took aim at the Athletics Federation of Nigeria and the Nigerian Olympic Committee. They couldn't register her name in the 100-meter event at the Paris Olympics. As a result, she went to LSU. She will miss this event. She had almost a similar experience last time, too. She missed the Olympics, and she is saying that in the last Olympics, I was not able to compete because they failed to release funds for athletes in the USA to be tested, which made 14 Nigerian athletes that qualified not compete. Now this. So there are controversies, Kim. It's not all going smoothly. Mm-hmm. What is the story with the water? I'd heard that the water in the Seine, because of all the heavy rains, was too polluted for them to hold events there, like rowing and marathon swimming. What's the latest?
Well, I heard the same thing, and yesterday you told me they were jumping in anyway.
Yeah, well, that's what I read.
So I don't know.
Albert, can we get on that and find out about, Commissioner, whether they are running events in the...
Albert, thank you.
There they are.
I believe that they delayed the competitions, but they will be still going in the river, yeah.
I don't know why you would be going. It's probably not to be an athlete, but if you're going to Mexico, Americans being told to be careful when traveling in and around Mexico. They're worried about the fallout from the Sinaloa drug cartel leaders being scooped up. They think that Americans could be in danger. You remember El Mayo and another leader, Joaquin Guzman. Oh, wait a minute. It was El Mayo is the one guy, and then and El Mayo is the co-founder of the Sinaloa drug cartel.
Right.
And then
The other guy was El
Guzman.
Chapo's son, I believe.
Yeah, okay. El Chapo's son. Right. So apparently, Americans are being urged to be very careful and pay attention to warnings or notices from the U.S. Embassy and consulate so they don't get caught up in street violence in Mexico. Scary. The Kerry Lake election denying candidate, she is, excuse me for a second.
Oh, no. Kerry Lake.
She knows no bounds. Denying the results of the 2020 election. She even made former President Donald Trump laugh about it because she was so vocal about the fact that the election was stolen. Remember, she said that her own election was stolen in Arizona. It doesn't matter what you ask Kerry Lake about, Trump said. How's your family? She'll be like, the family's fine, but they're never going to be great until we have free and fair elections. This is Trump speaking. Trump in Exile is the new book. It's not quite out yet, but Kerry Lake is mentioned prominently as somebody who is a Trumpy and willing to go down with Trump. Let's hit some news with Kim.
Oh, before we get there, to round out my Olympics, I've been enjoying just what's going viral on Twitter and the shooting. What do you think that our country would be doing good at? We haven't been winning, but there's some viral photos of just how casual these shooters look. Like this woman, Kim Yeji, I think is her name, from Korea. She's been going viral just from looking like she's just walked out from, walked straight off the plane going in to be an Olympian athlete. Yeah,
that's weird that she's got one hand in her pocket and then the other hand extended with the gun. That's a pistol, a kind of an extended barrel pistol.
Yeah.
But
and
you're
then this
right.
guy went viral just last night. This guy from
And here's
Turkey.
another
He
guy.
just looks like they're calling him the Turkish hitman.
Is he does have a cold, sort of steely look on his face.
It's nice to see all these non-athletes being technically are athletes. They just look like your regular average person.
I mentioned the other day that if it had been a mass shooting event, I think we would have done better, the Americans. But because it's only a shooting event, we're
It's a single
trailing.
target. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Albert. Thank you very much. And of course, the gymnastics and everything that is so incredible. And the track and field starts, I believe, soon, next week, and the next few days, maybe this weekend.
Yeah, they like to have that as the end. It's like the most popular events. That one and the swimming.
Yeah.
And since I'm here and I'm the commission, just came pre-show donation from Cindy.
Oh yeah, Cindy, thank you. How about $6.20 on a super chat? Day off after going to the awesome Giants and A's game, an hour and 55-minute complete Webb game. Also, love David Katz. By the way, Webb pitched so well, but again, the Giants' bats were quiet.
Yeah, classic, especially for him. Him specifically, they never score runs, but a complete game shutout, very impressive. We barely made any moves during the deadline, and we're not even close to the wild card, which almost allows the whole NL, Mark. Everybody makes the wild card, and we're not close to that right now. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Hey, they took a shot in the offseason. They tried to get Aaron Judd. They tried to get Ohtani. And they really did.
Ohtani, and then there's Correa that fell out. We've tried, and we've signed some people, but we've committed to them. And if they just walk after their contracts expire, we get nothing for it. So
here is shadow producer Calvin Wan. I think she puts her hand near her pocket hip to stabilize her body before shooting the target. That makes sense, but it does have the additional effect of making it look super casual, But Calvin is probably right about that. Yeah. All right. Smash the like button like a boss, if you would. And David Katz next. The former federal prosecutor joins, and we'll get into the law. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee. It is true, a prisoner swap has been achieved. It is being called a feat of diplomacy, this U.S.-Russia prisoner swap that freed Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, pictured here, and others. That's what President Biden said while speaking from the White House, announcing the release of 3 American citizens and an American green card holder that he says were unjustly imprisoned in Russia. Reporter Evan Gershkovich and former Marine Paul Whelan were released in this deal. Picture Paul Whelan as a United States Marine, and here he is behind bars in Russia. He, too, will be freed.
He's been there since 2018.
Crazy. A New York appeals court is upholding a gag order that restricts former President Trump's public statements regarding his hush money case after he appealed to lift the order. The gag order bans Trump from speaking publicly about the court, staff, the prosecutors, or their families. In the decision filed today, the panel of judges said the order can stay in place through Trump's sentencing. Judge Juan Merchan lifted some of the order when he was convicted in the case, Trump, but left some in place. Vice President Kamala Harris is responding to former President Trump after he questioned her race. Trump, in an interview with the National Association of Black Journalists convention yesterday, said Harris was always of Indian heritage and later happened to turn black. Vice President Harris said Trump's divisiveness and disrespect is the same old show, and Americans deserve better. Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, is touring the U.S.-Mexico border. Vance met with law enforcement officials in Arizona today, slamming what he called the Harris administration's open border policies. He promised to implement the so-called Remain in Mexico policy and construction of the border wall if Trump wins the White House in November. The alleged mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks is avoiding the death penalty. Yesterday, officials announced 3 of the September 11th suspects being held at Guantanamo Bay have agreed to plead guilty and face sentencing August 5th. The defendants are accused of providing training, money, and assistance to the 19 terrorists who hijacked the passenger planes in 2001. Some families forced out by California's 5th largest wildfire ever are returning today to find out they have nothing left. Evacuation orders lifted in parts of Butte County where the Park Fire started last week near Chico. CAL FIRE gave an update last night showing most of the 391,000 acres burned, actually in neighboring Tehama County. The damage toll also much higher, 437 homes and buildings destroyed in both counties, another 42 damaged. Inspection teams aren't done looking yet, though. Right now, crews have the fire 18% contained. Meanwhile, the man suspected of starting that park fire is due in court today. Ronnie Stout will likely enter a plea during his arraignment on arson charges. He claims it was all an accident, saying his car got stuck on rocks and wouldn't start and then caught fire. But witnesses reported seeing him push the car into a ravine in Chico. Those flames spread really quickly, forcing evacuations across 4 counties. Stout has 2 prior convictions and was on probation for DUI when he was arrested, and he's also a registered sex offender. So
wow,
isn't he a nice
mess.
guy? Yeah, a definite mess. The University of California president is stepping down. Michael Drake plans to leave next summer and then take a sabbatical before returning to a faculty position. He's held that job since 2020, right as the pandemic was unfolding. Governor Gavin Newsom praised him for leading with grace and vision, saying it's been an honor to work alongside him. The news, though, comes as the UC system celebrates a milestone, admitting its largest, most diverse class for this fall. Students wanting to attend next fall have to start applying today. California lake levels are expected to drop in the future. A new state report finds reservoirs will collect and store 23% less water in 2043 because of climate change. This could severely impact cities and towns that provide water to millions of people, likely forcing conservation. The report cites 2 projects that may help. One is the planned 45-mile tunnel under the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta to safeguard water shipments. The other would be a new reservoir to capture water from the Sacramento River. Researchers in Japan say they may have found a link between symptoms of autism, spectrum disorder, and umbilical cord blood. According to a news release from the University of Fukui, the levels of a certain fatty acid in the umbilical cord blood during pregnancy appear to have an impact on developing autism spectrum disorder. The finding could pave the way to better understand how autism develops in children, possibly develop tests that predict the likelihood that a child will have it. And lastly, former Saturday Night Live cast member Maya Rudolph will be returning to the show this fall. Did anybody see that coming? Deadline reports she'll reprise her role as Vice President Harris through the 2024 election. Rudolph won an Emmy in 2020 for her portrayal of Harris on an episode of SNL in December of 2019. Fans immediately started to call on SNL to bring her back to play Harris as soon as President Biden announced his decision to drop from the race. The 50th season of SNL is set to premiere September 28th. 50
I just saw that,
seasons.
Wow. Colin Jost is going to be doing Pop Culture Jeopardy. He's going to be hosting that too. So,
ooh, that'll be fun.
Yeah. So everybody from SNL is on to successful stuff.
This report
I
is
think
sponsored.
Pete Davidson just checked into rehab yesterday.
Wow. There'll be a bunch of girls there in rehab for him to hit on.
This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Drink up, because it's good stuff.
Woohoo.
You can find a huge selection of coffees and amazing teas at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Please make sure that you get your exclusive 10% Mark Thompson Show discount by entering Mark T, no spaces, Mark T, M-A-R-K-T, at checkout. You get your 10% discount, and you can enjoy the good stuff. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash it with your iron rod. Oh, girl, baby girl. Don't even
I
play.
come from regular stock. There's a reason that this place is fun.
Put that coffee down.
Don't ever use that word.
What are the porn stars doing, Mark?
They pay me a lot of money for having attitude.
You cannot say you love your country.
What you say is the political dogma that they're trying to shove down our throats.
Science
Straight up right in, no problem.
What the hell is going on in the United States of America?
I love it when you're angry.
I don't wear a mask for the same reason I don't wear underwear. Things gotta breathe.
Say what?
Do you have a secret talent?
It's fantastic.
You get nothing.
Morning.
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to Texas.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Did you really just do that?
Right on, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thank you for smashing the like button. We appreciate it. A thumbs up actually does us all kinds of good in the algorithm of YouTube. I don't really quite understand it, but it definitely does help, and it is free. Please consider subscribing as well and hitting the notification bell. You'll know whenever we drop another video. I sometimes am reluctant to do this, but I'm waiting for David Katz, so I will take on Chris Hultgren, who is one of our, he stirs the pot in the chat. Like, he'll say stuff like this: Kamala's father is not black. I don't know where you get your information, Chris, but I mean, I know you like to say a lot of stuff that's just sort of incendiary, and just to kind of light a fuse under us. Incendiary is a ding word. But what do you think? Jamaica is where her dad's from. Isn't that right, Kim? Her dad's from Jamaica. Okay, her mom's Indian, her dad's Jamaican. And the Jamaican black men are from where? Do you want to take a guess, Chris, or are you just talking out of your ass again? They're from Africa. Why are they from Africa, Mark? Because of the slave trade. Okay, dude? Go back and look at the history of Jamaica in the 16 and 1700s, and there was a trafficking of people, and they were black. They were African, okay, from Africa, and they ended up in Jamaica. So, you know, Bob Marley, Usain Bolt, they are black people. I can't believe we're even arguing over this. And more to the point, Kim's mention of what is often talked about by those people of color is associated with how they are treated in the culture. If you have skin and features that look like a black person, you are treated like a black person. And it almost doesn't matter. Oh, but technically I'm, yeah, that's not the way we do it. It's not, there's no genealogy when you walk in a room or you get stopped by a cop or whatever the situation may be. So I just saw it in the chat and I thought, dude, seriously? Come on, man. Find a better hustle than that. It's just a weak hustle, Chris. But
is that a red card? Yellow card?
No.
Spouting
Chris
false information?
I'm so used to his BS. No. You're not going to get yellow carded for it, Chris. You're not. If you're new, we'll yellow card you if you make fun of a guest or you can make fun of me, you can call me names, but don't make fun of a guest. That's all I ask. They're guests on our show, and so that's something that we really you try to protect. So I don't want to get into anything too deep before David Katz gets here, and I'm hoping David Katz does get here. But
I just
will
sent him
mention
another link, so hopefully he
so
sees
did I.
that.
Oh, okay, cool. Did he mention I'm having trouble getting on or something? Or
No, I'm just guessing he gets a bunch of emails, and he'd like to
I
see
see.
one at the
Yeah.
top.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then let me just share this with you because it is kind of important.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There is a meat recall. 7 million more pounds of deli meat tied to a listeria outbreak. And it's high-end meat. Boar's head is recalling an additional 7 million pounds of ready-to-eat products made at a Virginia plant. This is a deadly outbreak of Listeria food poisoning. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture is investigating it, but the new recall includes 71 products made between May 10th and July 29th. The Boar's Head brand and the Old Country brand, they are high-end brands, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
People go in there, they expect high-end stuff.
Yeah, they
and
do.
now they may be poisoned by Listeria. The products that are included in the recall are liverwurst, ham, beef salami, bologna, and other products that are made at the firm's Jarrett, Virginia plant. There's an ongoing outbreak of Listeria poisoning that's killed 2 people and sickened nearly 3 dozen in 13 states, according to the United States Centers for Disease Control. And that's not fake. That's not fake. Real.
That's real.
So that is something to keep in mind if you're a big one for cold cuts, you know. And
David Katz is here now.
Oh, David Katz is here. All right. My anxiety about what happened to Katz has been...
The Mark Thompson Show.
It's been quelled. I now have my great quelled would be a ding word. On Thursdays, this guy joins us. He's so generous with his time because he is used across the English-speaking world for legal analysis of all sorts. The former federal prosecutor, now working the defense side of the table. He's David Katz, everybody. Hi, David.
Great to be with you. Kim, welcome back. I didn't see you last week. I hope you're much better, Kim.
Yeah, Kim, are you much better?
I am feeling a lot better. Thank you, David Katz. You're so nice. Thank you.
Well, David, I have COVID right now. How about a little sympathy for me?
Oh, my goodness, Mark.
I've got to get this Paxlovid. Guess how much they want for the Paxlovid, David Katz? $500. I mean, I'm just a little guy with a YouTube show.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Yeah, I'm not supposed to go up with that kind of money. So, and then Kim tells me the Paxlovid is almost worse than COVID. So, anyway. So you're up to date on those of us with COVID and those of us who are just getting COVID. Now,
I'm sorry to hear that, Mark.
Thank you, pal. I couldn't stand to see Kim get all of the sympathy. I had to grab some for myself, so thank you. I want to start with a very high-profile deal that was made with these guys in Guantanamo to avoid the death penalty. These are the 9/11 plotters. They say the self-confessed, that is to say, professed plotters, the mastermind, this Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and 2 others. Can you speak to this? Has been going on for decades now, right? Since, I think it more or less 20 years, something like that?
Well, KSM, as he's known, was actually found in Pakistan in 2003. But there were warrants for his arrest for planning airplane bombings way back in the 90s. And there's stories of the FBI agent who chased him. He actually chased him to Qatar. Qatar said they lost him. He didn't get him back from Qatar. And then years later, of course, he did this absolute atrocity. You know, there's this huge debate about the death penalty. And when that debate takes place, people always conjure up somebody other than Hitler who they think, Osama bin Laden. You don't think that person deserves the death penalty. And if you're going to conjure up that debate, here's KSM, who went out of his way to plot and be the architect of 3 million Americans dying. There's also thousands and thousands of people who have cancer-related problems on account of the site in New York City. You know, all the toxins that were released. So this fellow is absolutely an avowed mass murderer. Apparently a huge attention seeker, shows absolutely no remorse. But the problem is the case, as you indicated, has been kicking around since 9/11. That was 23 years ago almost. And the case has not moved forward for many, many reasons that we can get into. One of them was that they were talking about trying him in a civilian court, not in a military court in Guantanamo, but the Department of Justice trying him in New York City. And believe it or not, there was a huge outcry. It's like nobody wanted this trial in their backyard, even given what the stakes were, even the horrible things that were alleged in this case. It's him and 4 co-defendants. Apparently, one of them is his nephew who did not take this deal. I don't know exactly what they're going to do with the 5th one who didn't take the deal. There's one who was found mentally incompetent to stand trial. and then there's KSM, and there's two co-defendants who would apparently be taking this deal and entering some sort of guilty plea next week and agreeing to these terms, which are secret. There has not been transparency about it, Mark, but the main deal is that they would not suffer the threat of the death penalty, the three of them.
The one thing that hasn't been secret is some published reports of waterboarding of prisoners and the torture, and that is not nothing, because that stuff has muddied the water on these guys. Isn't that right, David?
Well, absolutely. And of course, there's an embarrassment and worse to the United States from airing this all out in court. This would be a military court because there was no appetite in the end to try it in a civilian court. So it's going to be at Guantanamo in a military court. It's actually the Department of Defense that handles the case, not the Department of Justice, because it's the military justice system. But yes, the waterboarding would come out. Apparently the KSM was waterboarded 180 sometimes. I think all intelligent people who don't have a dog in the race thinks, of course, waterboarding is torture. And he was told they were going to kill his family, according to the allegations. He was waterboarded. He thought he was going to drown. They made him sit around naked, position torture, all that kind of stuff. My point is just that if there's fruit of torture, obviously the fruit of the torture should not come in. But at least my understanding of KSM is they had a perfectly good, valid case against him by more than a reasonable doubt before he was ever tortured or waterboarded. And, generally under our rules, if there's, what they call fruit of the poisonous tree, if the police did something unconscionable, illegal, unconstitutional, we don't allow the fruit of that to come in, but we do allow the existing evidence before the torture took place, before the waterboarding came in. Now, if he implicated one of the other people, part of not allowing in the fruit of the poisonous tree was we would not allow in what KSM said under torture against any other co-defendant. But my understanding is that they have a pretty solid case against them too. And of course, some of the family members are absolutely screaming and saying that they want them to get the death penalty. And the biggest hypocrite, in my opinion, one of the great clowns in this act is, of course, McConnell in the Senate, who just came out and said, oh my God, how is this happening? Why are they going so light on these people? Let me remind everybody that when W was the president, and then later on, when Trump was the president, the Republicans controlled the Senate and the House. And there was no appetite for apparently moving this case along, getting it to a civilian court, imposing the death penalty on these folks. So it's easy for them to say now, oh my goodness, why did the Department of Defense make this deal? But there are some reasons. The case has been kicking around, Mark, as you said, since 9/11, and he's been in custody for 23 years. Some people will ask, well, isn't there a speedy trial part of our Constitution? Isn't there something like that? My understanding is it's in the Department of Defense, but obviously they would have brought all those motions. Apparently there's 35,000 pages just of transcripts for any judge coming into this case to read. Jeez. There's dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds and hundreds of motions. And that's a whole other problem in the case. There apparently have been 8 or 9 different military judges on this case. I have no idea why the military system can't keep some judge on this case and say, look, keep going through with this. And finally, there's the problem of the lawyers. You might say, who in their right mind would want to be the lawyer? What American lawyer would want to be the lawyer for KSM? But, it's a celebrated case. I think they're paid and appointed by the court. They gave them a huge runaround, and worse than that, in Guantanamo. They would drive around the lawyers. Then they put all these crazy protective orders on them. If someone had called me and said, David Katz, this is the case of a lifetime, would you take it? I would not have taken that case. But some attorneys took that case and they've run with it. And of course, that's controversial. But everyone, even this KSM, everyone is entitled to a criminal defense. But some people think, wow, it's amazing that this one didn't end in the death penalty at the end, at least for KSM. Anyone who believes in the death penalty, I think this is the guy they have in mind for who it should be imposed on. Even if it's imposed very, very rarely, they think this is the guy.
The plea negotiations have been underway for over 2 years, it's noted here. The 3 men also agreed to a process to respond to questions submitted by family members of victims regarding their roles and reasons for conducting the September 11th attack. Family members may be able to testify during sentencing hearings, which will start in the summer of 2025 at the earliest, according to this agreement. But there are a lot of family members who are really frustrated here, and they feel, as I've read the statements from family members, they just feel as though justice delayed, is justice denied. I mean, that this thing has gone on so long, and it's been brutal for everybody. You mentioned the lawyers, you mentioned the defendants, you mentioned sort of the process and how frustrating it is. And for family who lost so many loved ones in the 9/11 attack, it's been frustrating for them as well.
Oh, absolutely, Mark. And, some of the details of the agreement, I mean, to me, I think a lot of it's really a sop. And I think that, what's really going on is that, would they have actually faced the death penalty? Would this thing have gone on another 10 or 20 years, spend an awful lot of money on it? Have these people been on the roller coaster that they're frustrated right now? How frustrated would they be in 10 years? So there's an argument for resolving it. And obviously what the three of them wanted was to not get the death penalty. Life is dear. People hold continuing to live dear, even in the confinement and bad conditions and worse at Guantanamo. So that was obviously something that they wanted. And I think that what the government wanted here was some kind of closure, after all of this time. But I think all this other stuff, they're going to answer questions, these three, leaders of the 9/11 plot, because this guy really was the architect. I mean, good reporting has revealed, Mark, that he basically had this idea. He told Osama bin Laden this idea, but this was KSM's brainchild. He's an American educated engineer who came up with this awful plot and basically sold it to Osama bin Laden, trained the people. As I say, they apparently have enormous evidence against him before he was ever waterboarded, this KSM. But whether he's going to say, why he did it, okay, so that in a month, he's going to answer, I did it because I hate the West. The West screwed over Islam. It screwed over the Middle East, and I wanted revenge. I think we kind of knew that. If you read The Looming Tower, that great book, The Looming Tower, I think you kind of know what his answers are going to be. And they're going to make a victim impact statement. I mean, of course, that's a sop. That's absolutely, righteous. But we know the victim impact statement. It's been awful. We've lived with it since 9/11 and shared the suffering and pain and dismay and everything else. I mean, it's important that they speak in court, but a lot of them are going to say, I wanted these people to get the death penalty. That's my victim impact statement. And that's not going to happen. And Mark, I'm really not taking a side in the whole thing, because I do see both sides of it. But what's interesting is that apparently two of the things that the three of them wanted was to not be held in solitary confinement. Solitary is terrible. You might say, wow, for what these folks did, I'm not that offended by solitary confinement for them, however mentally anguishing it is. And the other thing that they wanted apparently was to be more in touch with their families or relatives or something like that. And you can see these relatives saying, look, I'm not in touch with my father, son, wife, grandchild, grandparent who died on 9/11. No, I'm really not very sympathetic to that. They want to have more contact with their family. But there are all these kind of details. And I think that one of the reasons it's not transparent is I think that people will be even more, right, Mark?
Sure.
They'll be even more offended when they see the details. And if they do have a guarantee of no solitary confinement, or they have more contact with their relatives, something like that, people are going to say, like I just said, where's my contact with my relatives?
Sure. I want to get to Rudy Giuliani in a moment and his new deal around bankruptcy. But first, I wanted to get to a law that has just gone into effect in Louisiana. And it's interesting and instructive for what might happen elsewhere in the country. It's a law that makes bystanders who film police in the middle of an arrest or the middle of any kind of police action, anybody who films them is subject to arrest themselves. I say film, I mean video on, in all the ways you can video, generally with a phone. It's pretty draconian. And, I'll mention George Floyd. We wouldn't know about the nature of the George Floyd details were it not for those citizen journalists or voyeurs, whatever you want to call them. I wonder if you can give me a word on this, David. It's interesting. It's Louisiana, so it's a deeply conservative place, but...
Well, Louisiana, if you remember Streetcar Named Desire, when Stanley Kowalski is explaining that the laws of Louisiana aren't like the laws of the other state. And it sure seems like Louisiana, they have a different legal tradition, and they seem to come up with not only these very conservative laws, but what's the word they're using now for Trump and Vance? Weird. They seem to come up with these sort of weird legal things. And I don't see how they could enforce this. If you're obstructing an investigation or you're being told by an officer to stand back like 10 feet, it seems to me that those may or may not be lawful depending how they execute it, right?
Well,
Mark,
just to interrupt for a second, the law will make it a misdemeanor for anyone, including journalists, to be within 25 feet of a law enforcement officer if the officer orders them back. So go ahead.
That's the part that if all you're adding to the alleged criminal or misdemeanor conduct is that the person is filming, it seems to me that, especially for a journalist, that just flies right in the face of the First Amendment, which does apply to the state. So when the police officer who's acting for the state tells somebody that you cannot stand in a public place and film something, if they don't have a right to stand there, they don't have a right to stand there. But as I said, I don't think it adds anything to any misdemeanor that you're also filming. So I think the law will be struck down as applied to anybody who is just filming. And I think especially to an accredited journalist, I think they'll probably bring a test case the first time that some accredited journalist, otherwise you have the issue of who's a journalist, who's a bystander with interest, and all that. But certainly any accredited journalist, somebody with a press pass. So I think this one's kind of dead on arrival. I think the police unions fight for this, and I think it's really foolish. This is where the police look bad and look like they're being authoritarian and not just keeping the peace and helping the people.
They also, to speak on behalf of the journalists involved, what's 25 feet? It's whatever the cops want it to be. At that moment, in other words, it's a little the Wild West. I always say that to people dealing with police officers anyway. I deal with police officers with great respect. I think that's a good way to deal with them. They have a tough job, etc. But I would say that it's the Wild West. Anything that they want to have happen out there can happen, and you can adjudicate it later, but it can go sideways in a hurry before you ever get to any kind of adjudication. So anyway, back to the 25 feet. What's 25 feet? It's whatever that cop wants to say it is, and he can grab you. And now he essentially has stopped the action that he wanted to stop, which is you videoing the event. So in the short term, until it is challenged in the ways that you suggest, it seems to me like it's really a win for the cops to essentially shut down not only citizen journalists, but journalism across the board.
Mark, I just don't think it's going to really have teeth. It's just very hard to imagine how it. And then, of course, you have on film when they make you step back because everything's being filmed, including the police effort to enforce this, and that's going to look even worse. I think if the cops thought this through, if they're not performing their tasks in a way that they want them to be filmed, they're doing something wrong. That's what the body cams are all about. If you're not doing something that can be filmed and shown to the world, you need to think about it. When I became an assistant U.S. attorney, my boss said to me, assume everything that you do is going to be on the front page of the LA Times. And if you're doing something you don't want to be on the front page of the LA Times, don't do it.
Now to Rudy Giuliani. He's agreed to a deal to end his personal bankruptcy case. Court filings are showing that this guy, who is the ex-personal attorney for Donald Trump, I'll remind everybody, he's agreed to pay $100,000 in cash, as well as use proceeds from the sale of one of his luxury apartments in either New York or Florida to pay off the remaining debt. This is to formally end his Chapter 11 case. And it means that, this guy who's facing a string of money difficulties, David, will not be forced to answer questions about financial circumstances in any kind of bankruptcy court. So it's interesting because the bankruptcy judge threw out the bankruptcy case and criticized Giuliani. You'll remember we talked about it on this show because he wasn't complying with court orders and he wasn't being transparent. So what's happening here? He has a $148 million bill that he has to pay in that defamation case with Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. How does this help that?
Well, it's very complicated, and I think his goal in going into bankruptcy court with this enormous mountain of debt was to pay, let's say, 1 cent on the dollar, including to these two women down in Georgia who suffered so much at his hands and on account of his big defamatory mouth, Giuliani. And basically caused a campaign of terror against these two ladies who were doing nothing more than doing their civic duty to work as poll workers. So there's all awful. But I think his goal was to pay 1 cent on the dollar. And then there are also some preferred creditors. So maybe he could pay like his lawyers or something like that, a little more than 1 cent on the dollar. That didn't come to fruition. That didn't work at all. He never got out of the bankruptcy court with what he wanted, which was a discharge. The idea of a discharge in bankruptcy, Mark, is a fresh start. So his goal was to pay everyone 1 cent, walk away, be able to make a lot of money in the future after his fresh start, and keep the money. Okay, that he didn't get. He got dismissed from bankruptcy, which is what the judge did. He dismissed him from bankruptcy. Now, this last minute thing, as I understand it, $100,000 goes to his own attorneys. So, of course, he was more than happy to somehow get that $100,000 to pay his own attorneys and not have these ladies who have $148 million judgment say, no, we get our fair share of that. You don't pay your lawyers $100,000. That didn't happen. Now, apparently this apartment that he owns, this condo, there's one in New York that's worth over $5 million and one in Florida that's worth over $3 million. From the articles I saw, it wasn't clear whether he pledged both of them. It looked like he pledged one of them, and I would assume it would be to pay those ladies because they seem like the most valid claimants in all of this. So I think what's happened to him, and without getting too much into the weeds, is I think these ladies are going to get most of the proceeds of the sale of the New York apartment. Meanwhile, they can put a lien on it so he can't play games, Trump-like games where some trust in Russia that owns another trust in Cyprus that owns this, that owns that, try to put it beyond the reach of collection of those ladies. I think they're getting that proceeds pretty much firmly, Mark. His lawyers, Giuliani's lawyers, are getting $100,000. He's now discharged from bankruptcy. He has no protection from bankruptcy. Everybody else can sue him. They can do what they want. They can take his deposition in those civil cases. But the bankruptcy thing is over, which means he doesn't have a very, intrusive, very smart, very conscientious trustee in bankruptcy driving him crazy. He won't have that. Someone like what's his name, Madoff. Remember, Madoff had that tremendous.
But he will. But he's lost the cloak of bankruptcy, or is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
He's got no protection. So if they find something of his that's worth $5 million. And they go grab that thing. There's a third apartment that we don't know about. Somebody finds it. It's held in some trust. They can relate it to Giuliani. They can go grab that right away. And Giuliani cannot go into bankruptcy court. I think it's sort of res judicata now. It's a decided case that he is discharged and doesn't have access to the bankruptcy courts. I don't know if they could try to play some game and he could go bankrupt in some other district, but I don't think so. I think this has what we call a preclusive effect. And he's done with bankruptcy, which means he's done with having a bankruptcy trustee needling him, but he's also done with any protection. So somebody can put a lien or a levy on something, and that's it. That's it. He can either beat that person in court like those ladies from Georgia, or they just collect. There's no bankruptcy protection he can seek. I think that's where he stands right now, and he's going to take his chances. The Florida thing, there's all kinds of bankruptcy protections. We think that's why OJ went to Florida. We think that's why a lot of people go to Florida. They have these huge bankruptcy protections. They can kind of go to their creditors. I know I did wrong. I know I did stuff I shouldn't have done. I know I cheated you, but Florida is a on your creditor's state. And we think that's why a lot of scamsters go there and try to get that protection.
Well, Rudy has certainly proven the kind of guy he is. What he did to those two poll workers is just devastating and obscene, and I wish he would do time for it, but sadly the legal system is inadequate, and it's been such that he's been able to drag it out, but at least they'll recover something, is your point.
I think, Mark, if he played enough games with his assets, I think he might be charged in a criminal court, maybe a federal court, with money laundering. For money laundering, people don't understand it. You have to have a crime. And once you have a crime and you get money from it, then a second crime is laundering money. Laundering money doesn't sort of just stand out there, on its own. But I think there's certainly a crime that you could connect to Giuliani if a federal prosecutor were aggressive about it. So I think Giuliani ought to really give him some free advice on your show. Don't play games and try and send that money offshore or transfer it around or something like that, because I think he could be federally, criminally prosecuted. I think he's standing on two banana peels.
Mr. Katz, it's asking, Brian says, Mark, ask Mr. Katz, what is the blue glob or globe on the table that is turning and over his right shoulder? What is that?
It's a globe that I got at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. Good institution, worth supporting, and I bought it at retail to help support the museum, and I have it on my desk.
Yeah, there you go. All right, that's it for the press.
I never explained the things behind me, but that's the federal judge that I clerked for in Washington, D.C.,
Sure.
John Garrett Penn. He's passed away by now, but that's a photo of him when he was in his early 50s. He made it to the federal bench as a U.S. district judge when he was 49 years old. So that's
I remember my dad talking about the judge that he clerked under, and the judge he clerked under was very much a part of our lives, even as a kid. I don't remember, I didn't know, I was a little kid, but I remember him speaking so fondly of him. Clearly, it's a kind of relationship, if it goes well, that is an enduring one, and as you grow into a career, that judge who was instrumental in crafting you in the early going, anyway, as a lawyer, really is appreciated, huh?
Well, it was a wonderful position for me to get as a young lawyer in Washington, D.C., and I'd actually turned down a clerkship in the Southern District of New York because it was for 2 years, and there were some other things, and I thought, do I really want to do this for 2 years? And then, there was a little gap, and I didn't know if I was going to get a clerkship with a federal judge, and a lot of the kids who were on the law review with me, were already signed up with a federal judge, either San Francisco or New York, Washington, some down here in LA. And then mine came through, and my judge was appointed by Carter. So I was his first full-time clerk. And then he had a wonderful case, the Abscam case. There were 4 or 5 different Congress members who got indicted by Carter. The joke on Carter was that he was so not politically astute that he only indicted Democrats. But there was, and of course, he didn't indict them at all. That's that view of the president having some huge power over the Department of Justice, which was non-existent. The Attorney General and the FBI saw fit to pursue the cases. But it was ironic that 5 of them were Democratic Congress members. Only 1 was a Republican. And my judge tried one of them in the 81 time frame. And by that time, Reagan had won. It was an interesting year, Mark. It was like the year when Trump came to power and Obama left. This was Reagan coming to power in early 81. And then, everyone talking about the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania. Then in March of that same year, just 2 months later, at the Washington Hilton, which was right there in Washington, D.C., not that far from where the clerkship was at the U.S. courthouse. Reagan was very seriously wounded in that attack.
Yeah, and from that attack, though, you got some gun legislation that has since expired, but from
the Brady bill,
Brady
for
bill,
his
but
famous,
from this,
his aide who got
sure.
even worse wounded in that he was, I think, in a wheelchair, wasn't he, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, he was really damaged for life, exactly. So that was one of the positive things that came from this horrible event. But the latest with the president or former president, there is no even talk of gun legislation. David, thank you. So appreciate your time, and I look forward to next week. It's a wild time in America. I think we all need a lawyer. I'm glad you're ours. David Katz is my 3rd favorite Katz after my 2 kitties. Oh, Trevor Starr with a 10.
Thank you very much. And it's great to be with your audience. And, keep the comments coming. I always look at them, after I've
been
on.
Big shout out. Yeah.
Great to be with all of you.
Yeah. People love you, David Katz. So thank you. David Katz, everybody. See you, David.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I have a couple of stories for you, and then we might leave a minute or 2 early because I am weakened by this COVID that I have, which is sad. But, sad might overstate it, but it's just kind of a bummer. But I wanted to mention to you something that's going on in San Francisco. They're getting... again, I mentioned this from time to time. We started as a San Francisco radio show, and then we came over to YouTube, and so we still keep a pretty close eye on what's going on in the Bay Area in California. And essentially, what's happened is there are fewer and fewer kids to go to school, and they're closing schools because of this declining enrollment. And in San Francisco, they're closing them. I mean, some high-end schools are closing.
Yeah.
They're currently about 14,000 students shy of filling all of their buildings, and that shows a loss, these predictions do, and these projections of another 5,000 students by 2030. So there are too many schools, too few students, and what are they doing? And by the way, not enough money. We've known that for a long time.
Yeah.
And they are closing schools with partially empty classrooms. They say they have no choice. The school board is already under state fiscal control after overspending for years. And while closing schools won't fix budget problems, it would allow the district to ensure students still have access to social workers and counselors and all the resources that they need, despite the massive cuts to the balancing of the budget, which they're doing now. But it's one of the most distressing things that a parent can deal with, right? I mean, there are all these emotional meetings and angry protests in Oakland. The school board's 2022 decision to close 7 schools also led to a hunger strike. There was a community takeover of a school there in Oakland.
Yeah. Well, your school becomes your community. You know, these are your people, the people you see every day, the teachers that you celebrate. And so it becomes this, a big part of your life, whether you're the kid that goes there or the parent that's involved. So it's rough.
Exactly right. Matt Wayne, who's superintendent, said that ensuring that every student gets what they need to succeed is a top priority as a superintendent of SFUSD. I understand the pain and resistance that school closures will bring, but my responsibility is to prioritize our students' future. SFUSD is tackling these tough decisions head on, making changes that have been long overdue. Well, I mean, that sounds like administrative stuff that, superintendent says. I think you're left with not a lot of good choices, but there'll be a list of closures. And once the list is announced, the district's going to hold informational and feedback sessions at each of the schools that's recommended for closure. And then there'll be a final school board vote, and that'll be in December. So that's what's going on in San Francisco. It's scary. And again, money is gone, and now the enrollment is down. And you end up with these half-empty classrooms, and it's bad news.
And it's not just a city problem. It's a problem across California, really. So.
Exactly. That's exactly right. California finds itself sort of in the opposite situation that we did in 2019, let's say.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Back then, there was plenty of money. Cut your risk of dementia by 20% with one dietary change.
What is it? Help.
Well, you're not going to like it.
Uh-oh. If it's no chocolate, I think I might trade that for dementia.
No
wine?
First of all, I want to give Dave a big shout out. I have, this is for the
big shout out.
Dave gives me a 20 in the super chats. This is for Mark's Paxlovid fund. Feel better, buddy. Thank you, man. I do feel weakened by it. And I'm hoping, Kim's got me kind of worried about the Paxlovid. Or Paxlovid.
It's only 5 days. You take it twice a day for 5 days. You can handle it.
All right. Dementia risk rose by 14% when people ate about 1 ounce of processed red meat every day.
I could give that up. No problem.
The equivalent of slightly less than 2 3-ounce servings a week. So if you compare those people to those who only ate about 3 servings a month, their dementia risk, those who were eating 2 3-ounce servings a week, the dementia risk rose by 14%. That's a significant rise. The risk for dementia dropped by 20%, though, for people who replaced that small daily serving of processed red meat with a daily serving of nuts and legumes. What's a legume, Albert?
Google it.
It's a bean. Isn't it a bean?
It is, I believe, beans. I was asking Albert, but I will accept.
I had no clue. Yeah, that's a bean.
I felt that was.
I was a helper.
A question that Albert didn't know the answer to. That's why I asked him.
Processed red.
This is also a story that Albert will pay no attention to, and he will continue to eat the way he does because he's young and he believes he's bulletproof, and that is the beauty of youth. Albert believes that nothing he does will really affect him.
Albert,
He
thank
can
you.
Drink.
I'm gonna bookmark this part of the show and a reminder 30 years from now, Mark, and I'll just remember the good times.
Look back on this. Processed red meats, Albert, like bacon, sausage, hot dogs, and deli meats, often contain high levels of sodium. Also, saturated fat and nitrates. Eating higher amounts of these meats has been strongly linked to the development of colon and other cancers, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. Well, that really is the running the table, isn't it? That really is terrific.
Is that true? People are saying peanuts are also legumes. I had no idea.
Yeah,
Wow.
how about that? Yeah, peanuts are legumes.
Huh.
There is much we can do to reduce the risk of dementia, starting with actions that we know to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. They go on. Various doctors consulted for the study, and the study was observational, can only show an association, not necessarily a cause and effect, but the associations are very likely to be causal because the principal risk factors for Alzheimer's and cognitive decline are the risk factors for cardiovascular disease. So that's
Hey,
processed
between this
meat.
and the boar's head stuff, it's not looking good. You know?
It's a bad week for processed meat. You know, I'll just say.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
It's true.
Cheryl wants to know what's processed red meat. It's not butcher steak. It's like what you get at the fast food restaurant, right?
Yeah, it's cold cuts would be processed meat, but hot dogs are processed.
Right.
Sausage processed, bacon processed.
Sure, yeah.
Right, all that stuff. Okay. But nuts and legumes. What are legumes again, Albert?
Google it.
No, Albert can tell you.
They're beans, Mark.
There we go. Very nicely done.
Well done, Albert.
Just wanted
Does
to
he
check
get
to
extra
see-
pay for that?
No,
Is there
I just wanted to
prizes?
make sure he was paying attention and not sleepwalking through the show. He's on it. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'll have you know, Mark, I had full English breakfast when I was in London 3 straight days, which included the beans. So I do love the beans.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
I'm a big one for beans, too. Wes is throwing us a 5-spot.
Big shout out.
Here's to COVID still spreading its love after 4 years. Get well fast, Mark, and anyone with it. Yeah, get well fast. Thank you, pal. Thank you, Wes. You are a key part of our show. And Luis also.
Big shout out.
Just curious, how much do we have to pay to have Chris red-carded for a day? Do the bylaws of the program allow for such a bounty? That's very interesting. Can a red card be purchased?
I already
may have
yellow
to-
carded him, Chris.
You,
I did.
you can't yellow card him.
I did.
I
did it. I instituted the Thompson yellow card policy.
No, you cannot. No, you cannot do that. What did
He
you?
was-
Did you put him on the
It was
sideline?
a warning. No, it was a warning. I didn't do anything yet. I just gave a yellow card. It was a warning.
Okay. Well, again, I like the yellow cards to run through my office, if you would, please. But I know that I can sometimes be busy. So,
Kim, how are you?
I'm just saying that be careful because I know you.
You can't deputize me and give me the power over the chat and then willy-nilly rescind it at your heart's whim.
It wasn't willy-nilly. It was not my heart's whim. It was reasoned and it was clear. You do not have yellow card and red card privileges. You do not have
Forget it,
those.
Chris. I'm taking back your yellow card, I guess. Whatever.
My Midas Touch friends are crossing over. I mention this show frequently. Thank you, Audrey. Big shout out to you, Audrey.
Big shout out.
Well, I really appreciate you mentioning the show and sharing the show. And no, Kim, I have given her. Let me just clear this up.
I thought so too, Wes. Thank you.
Kim, if somebody says something about a guest or whatever, or really gets a comment that is way out of line, calling somebody a name or something, then Kim does have the ability to remove that person from the chat. Okay. That is, you're right. It's technically sort of red carding somebody, but the official red card has to be issued from my office.
Your rules are confusing.
Well, I'm sorry. I mean, Norm has it. Kim oversteps. It is true.
Rude.
She does.
No, Norm, it's not true.
Quit picking on Kim. She's our paragon of justice. Paragon is a
Thank
big
you,
one.
Heather.
And equity.
Thank you.
Wow,
She
I don't
gets
know.
it.
Who was, I just saw somebody generously made a contribution.
That was Asley.
Asley, coolest name, and thank you so
cutest
much,
picture.
Asley.
Big shout out.
Cutest picture, and thank you for a 20 today in the super That would be a super sticker, it looks like. So thank you very, very much. Wow, this has been fun, just kind of hanging out and talking about who has red card privileges. So
The Mark Thompson Show.
I must wrap things up, though. And I'm excited. Old Elmo just wanted to be a crowdfunder today. Thank you, Elmo. And that is a $10
Big shout out.
super chat. I'm not going to cry, but the way everybody stepped up, knowing that I have COVID, it's been so great.
Poor thing.
Oh my God. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I love it. Tomorrow is our Big Friday show. Albert curates Friday Fabulous Florida. Michael Shore comes in. He'll talk about the vice presidential nominee on the Democratic side. We'll also talk about the vice presidential nominee on the Republican side. And we'll dissect the week in politics with Michael. All of that tomorrow. Kim's got the After Party Live going on now at the After Party Live channel. So
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
All the time. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the love. Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.